What was your initial thoughts on Space Babies?
So the median of it is decent. There's some really good stuff, and there's some stuff that doesn't quite work, but I did enjoy it. I think my favorite aspect is some of the connections it makes to Ruby's character history. The scene with the snow on the spaceship is probably my favorite in the episode. There's other stuff like when Shuri does the whole, this is what I live for. It's this freedom. That's very doctorish. And there were some funny moments. I have said many times before, I'm much like Russell. I have a very immature sense of humor at times. So I did get a kick out of the fact that Ruby Sunday got covered in baby snot. I think that's hilarious.
The fact that the bogeyman was covered in bogies is very funny, I will say.
Yeah. In terms of things that I would say not all of it's against, but things I have to comment about it. I think the CGI for the babies' mouths doesn't quite work.
It's not great.
Because you can't really get babies to act. You just have to sort of have them, and the way mouths move in conjunction with your words is actually very complicated. It's one of the reasons why an animation like Arcane took so many years to produce, because mouth movements are very difficult to mimic, and this is live action. And the other reason is because the baby's facial expressions sometimes don't match what they're saying and the tone of their words, and it's very disorientating. The other thing that I will say, and this is not just a Space Babies thing, this is kind of a thing with every episode of RTD2 so far outside of Wild Blue Yonder, is that I, in general, I like what's called languid tempo. I like it in my music. I like it in my film. I like it in TV. I like it when I'm cooking. I like it when I'm exercising. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, in terms of fundamentals, the reason why I like it in storytelling is because it allows things to breathe, simmer, marinate. It means that you can really soak in as much of the impact of certain moments as possible, and I feel that quite a few of the big moments in these episodes into themselves are good moments that have an impact, but because they don't have much languid tempo in those moments, it doesn't allow them to really maximize the impact of what they are doing. That's another thing I would say about Space Babies and RTD2 in general. There are specifics I could get into if you went like scene by scene, moment by moment. But generally speaking, I did enjoy Space Babies. I thought it was a decent episode.
Yeah, so my initial thoughts on Space Babies, I think Space Babies is okay. I think performances of Shooty and Millie are very, very good. I think the music throughout is really, really good. Marigold is very, very good, as he always is. Very happy he's back. I think that the plot is quite thin. I think the idea that what Russell was going for, I think has legs. I think it just could have really been expanded with the other adult character, but it never really was. It never really went in the direction I thought it was, and that might be due to the runtime. I think the jokes in the episode were quite hit and miss for me. I think the constant saying of babies, space babies, did wear a little thin as the episode went on. Constantly repeating your jokes can more times than not grain on you, and it did for me here. I think this as a opening episode to the season is fine. I just think there's a lot of really weird editing choices that were constant throughout the episode that I felt could have slowed down. This episode is very high energy and very fast paced, and I feel like it never really takes itself a moment to really breathe during the moments it probably should. We get a lot of scenes with the babies. I think that's probably the quietest it really gets. The best moments for me were definitely the scenes just between the Doctor and Ruby. As you mentioned, the scene where Ruby's looking out on the planet and the Doctor talks about why he travels. Really good stuff. Really good dialogue and really good acting. And what I do like about Ncuti's Doctor, he is very open about talking about his past. Beginning episode, he talks that Gallifrey's gone and the Time Lords are all gone. He's the last of the Time Lords. People seem to be pissed off about that, really, which is weird because Chibnall is the reason that is a thing. Yeah, I think my major issue with Space Babies, I think the ending is quite rushed. And I think that's kind of a theme with every episode so far, other than probably Wild Blue Yonder. But yeah, I like Space Babies, but I think it is quite flawed overall.
There was one thing I forgot to say that I do really like about Space Babies thematically, is you have two adopted characters temporarily adopting babies, which was nice, because the Doctor and Ruby Sunday are both adopted. So I like that a lot. The fact that it's the whole thing of they go to the spaceship and the spaceship has things that are connected to the people that are going to it. Not only with the babies being part of Ruby's sort of character, because she has grown up in a foster home with her mum, but also that the Doctor was adopted because of the whole timeless child thing. And on top of that, things like how the Doctor is remembering back to the church with the snow, and then the snow appears on the ship. That was a massive.
That was really cool, positive. And I really liked how that was done directly. I think the direction of that scene.
You know what this is a bit like? It's so many parts of the show before have explored the way that the TARDIS has a link between the user and the TARDIS itself. And one of the examples I can think of that uses it pretty vividly is from Series 8, Listen, how when Clara puts her fingers into the TARDIS and they go back to when Danny was a kid. I feel like what they did here in Space Babies is like a much cleaner, less contrived version of that, where it's not so. I always found the way they did it in Listen to be a little bit strange. With this, the way they connected, it's a lot more organic, and I like that. I like the way they worked that in, the connections between the past and the present. Oh, let's also not forget there was that scene at the start. They go to Wyoming where there's dinosaurs, and Ruby steps on a butterfly, and everything changes for a second, which was interesting.
Connor, that breaks. There's no such thing as the butterfly effect in Doctor Who. What do you mean? It ruins everything. Do you think there might be a reason for that?
This discourse, the discourse around this reminds me of when Endgame came out and people just were having arguments over the whole Back to the Future thing. It's very strange.
I think there's a very obvious reason why that's happened, and I think it's to do with the fact that myths are becoming real.
Yeah, a lot of this is cause and effect from the 60th specials, I should say.
There's been a very clear indication that Russell wanted to do something to allow myths to happen, and I think he did it well enough where these things can happen.
Well, the Doctor invoked a superstition at the end of the universe, and then the Toymaker came in, and that has created this whole thing where the show, as it's being written, is now being built to do things that it's never done before, which is a great idea.
But that's not Doctor Who, Connor.
So-called progressives saying this.
I think it's on both sides, to be fair. But yeah, I find it very strange.
Well, it makes sense if a conservative says it because they want things to stay the way they are.
Yeah.
So even if they're wrong, at least they are sticking to their word.
They're sticking to their guns.
Yeah. I've always been relatively optimistic about the show doing new things. Like, I've always been like, it's why we now have a dynamic between a doctor and a companion that are like, it reminds me a lot of, I have these two friends at work. One of them's a queer man and one of them's a girl, a young girl, and their dynamic reminds me a lot of the Doctor and Ruby.
Yeah, I saw that a lot during secondary school. Like that dynamic, very much.
They're like two of my close friends from work, and their dynamic is very similar to this one, and it's one that the show's never done before. It's like the gossiping dynamic, and on top of that, you've got the very extravagant, theatrical, flamboyant presentation of the show now, which again, something it's never done before. These are things that a lot of people will look at and say, hey, that's not Doctor Who, but I would say, well, it wasn't, but now it is. And it's not really, I've never really had this.
Doctor Who doesn't have one strict tone.
No.
It never has.
It's been a show that has evolved and changed to many different things. It's like the same thing of
it suits to the time. Like
20, almost 20 years ago now, when people were saying, "Oh, Doctor Who's not supposed to have holding hands and romance and love." Like, it's like, yeah, it hasn't before, but now it is. It's like you can do so many different things, and they are doing new things. I don't think Russell would have ever come back to the show had he not tried to do new things. So not only are we getting a dynamic between characters that we haven't seen before in the show, but also we are getting concepts that we haven't gotten before in the show, where they are now invoking myths. We're getting all sorts of different kind of sci-fi rules, and there's been an inciting incident to allow this to happen. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for Russell for doing it that way rather than just doing it without explaining it. We have an actual reason to believe this stuff, which rewards you for paying attention, rewards you for, watching it. But like I said, the snowing in the space station, like that whole scene was great. But like I said at the start, if the episode was longer and had languid tempo, you could use time to really let it breathe and sink in and soak and marinate. I understand when you have a story with urgency in it, you do need to keep things realistic, but there are ways around that. Hello, Will.
Good morning, gay boy. Not untrue. I am not being offensive because that's just straight up true. Yes. I agree with all that. The snow scene was fucking really good. I really like that a lot. I think one issue that I've had with I guess the first two episodes, and it was kind of done here more in Space Babies. I think there's a very clear fast tracking through the dynamic between the companion and the Doctor here, which I think I wish Russell let it breathe, because in this episode she is on her first space adventure, and by the end she gets the TARDIS key. It feels very very soon, and I guess you could argue in one way that, as we see at the end of the episode, the Doctor, much like with Clara, which is, I feel like, I remember seeing the tweet of someone saying, "Oh, this is acting like the Clara in season 7, but you hate it then, but you like it now." It's like, please stop talking. It's very cringe. So I'm assuming in that regard, the Doctor just wanted to get Ruby on board so he can learn about Ruby. So you could argue that. Still feels like the dynamic is a little bit rushed at times, especially when we find out the passage of time in the second episode. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, the only sort of good faith I can give for that is that in the Church of Ruby Road, he spends a lot of time finding out who this person is before they become friends.
Possibly.
That is part of
I
it.
think they might, but I think that needs to be a bit clearer then, because when we go from Church of Ruby Road to Devil's Chord, that is a span of 6 months for Ruby.
Yeah,
That's a lot of fucking time, and
Yep.
it feels like that's a lot of time in universe where so much could change about Ruby in terms of how she sees the world,
Do you
and
think?
we're not seeing it, unfortunately.
Do you think if they made it that the Doctor trusting this person too early has an actual consequence, do you think maybe that could work? The fact that he's giving her a key too early and then he regrets not taking his time.
Well,
Do you think-
here's the thing. That's the last scene of the episode where, and this reminds me a lot of it reminds me a lot of Father's Day. I think you know the same one about where the Doctor, after giving the key, he sets up the one thing he'd never do, and that's bring Ruby back to the church on that Christmas.
Mm,
And
that's
it
true.
reminds me, it shows that the Doctor has learned so much over his years. Like Father's Day was a big point in his life. I remember, really good fucking episode, and I'd like that being sort of not hard on reference, but that is, you can harken back to something like that, a big moment in his history, and it's related here, which I think is really cool. I really like that scene as well, just in general. His acting is like, and Millie's is just fucking great in that scene.
That is one thing I will say. The acting from the lead two is spot on. They're both great.
They are fantastic.
Yep.
So when I don't know if you've seen the tweet that I did, that's actually done pretty well. Talking about Shooty's acting, someone fucking probably not my doctor said you can't even fucking like to the avail of you can't fucking understand him. It's like, are you deaf, lad? Fucking perk your ears up.
Yeah,
just very very strange. Because Shooty's acting and Millie's acting are fantastic.
Yeah,
great, fantastic,
very charismatic. Shooty Galways.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I do feel like, yeah.
Isn't it also nice after all these years to finally have a cool, socially competent doctor?
Yeah.
We literally
He didn't do anything that was... He never did anything that I felt was really stupid.
Well, even when he does weird sort of little quirky things, it never feels like he's being dumb with it. It feels like he's
never feels like he's being awkward. Like, he never believes he's awkward. He is confident, he is strong, he knows himself. That's the sort of thing that we've been missing.
Probably
in the last
his most strange moment, like when you look at it, is him using a big hammer in his underwear, bashing the TARDIS. Right, that's quite a cartoony moment, but he never feels socially awkward doing it. He feels like he enjoys it.
In the universe, it's not that he is actually like the character thinks they're being awkward. It's we're watching it, and it's like because they're an alien, it is they act strange in like how we think someone would normally act, and he just pulls it off fantastically. He's generally like right out of the park. He's acting his ass off.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's Russell T Davies' thing, right? He likes to write his doctors with a bit more competence in the room, if you get what I mean. Because both Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall liked their doctors to be a bit weird.
And it sort of be like that was the entire joke.
Yeah.
Especially more for Moffat, it was more made into a joke than a thing.
Don't we just love when Matt Smith gets silly?
That's the one with the sticks, right?
Remind me.
Yeah. You know what I really liked from the Space Babies? I like the design of the Boogeyman quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of my issues though with the editing is whenever they show the Boogeyman on camera, like on the cameras in the station, the editing was really weird, and it was every time it was shown, and it really put me off. I really didn't like the way they did that. It felt like too much trying to be like, this is scary, you need to be scared. If they did it just the first time it was shown, I feel like that would have been fine. But then they did it almost like every time it went up to the camera.
Yeah, it is interesting that because both these episodes have very strong direction. So you're pairing very strong direction with some amateur editing, and it's an odd combination, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the second episode is a lot better edited
Yeah, it's
than
a
the
lot
first.
smoother, a lot smoother.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing we can talk about is the other character, adult character in
Mm-hmm.
this episode, and I have a little bit of an issue with them, more to do with the conclusion, because I think they're set up with her character at first. While it's not like massive, I think there's something really decent there. She was the only one that stayed behind. Everyone else on the station left. And she's been taking care of the babies on the station for 6 years, and they've actually never knew she was a real person. Um, which is another thing they don't really go over. They just sort of meet up, and there's no real acknowledgement of like you were here the whole time and you never saw us. That was a scene that should have absolutely happened because that
Yep.
has a great potential. But then also at the end of the episode, she tries to kill the bogeyman, and there's not really an acknowledgement
Yeah,
once the plot is ended of that. It's kind of just swept under the rug of like she's being emotional, and it's really really strange. I don't know why, and I think it's probably to do with the runtime. But Russell needed to sort of address that. The Doctor needed to have a conversation with her of like,
definitely.
I get that the bogeyman, in comparison to the babies, is different, but that's still a baby.
I
That's
can
still,
hundred
something like that.
percent tell you that if this was, let's say, this was in series 10, I can guarantee you the Doctor would have had that conversation that you're talking about. I can
Well, it
see it.
reminds me of the conversation at the end of Cold Blood, but the difference is that character was shit. But even then, that they still had Moffat had the on the Chibnall. Sorry, Chibnall had the gall to actually write that
One of them.
scene, thankfully, but it didn't fucking matter because the character
Mm.
was shit. But Russell didn't write it here, which was like, all right. I feel like that needed to be acknowledged.
Yeah, the sort of thing of like, oh, it was, it was just a spur of the moment bit of genocidal anger, and now it's all better.
Yeah, attempted murder. Just and especially when they very much made it clear that the bogeyman exists because the system went awry, and because of like the training program for the babies went awry, it made a boogeyman, like an actual boogeyman made out of the baby's snot,
Yep.
which I think is quite funny. But that I like that as a concept. I think that's really cool that a bogeyman was created as part of a children's story. I
Yes.
think that's really, really cool as a concept.
Well, I mean, it's
And
just
it
such
kind of,
a
and it, yeah,
it's such a Doctor Who thing of what if the
Mhm.
bogeyman was actually made out of bogies?
Yeah, very simple. And for an episode one, I think that's a perfect little concept to do. But yeah, there's very much a not much of acknowledgement that she just attempted to kill, and obviously the look of a bogeyman, but still like a child of the station.
Mm.
It really needed a more acknowledgement, and it just didn't. And unfortunately, that makes the ending. The ending is very rushed in Space Babies.
Mm.
Like the last sort of like 5 minutes are pretty much just it's really like 3 minutes of the plot. Once they figure out what this thing is, the plot is pretty much done in like 3 minutes. The woman tries to throw the boogeyman out of the airlock, and there's a sort of like it's the last of its kind, it's the only one of its kind, kind of thing, which I know they tried to relate it to what at the beginning of the episode, but it felt kind of, I don't know, could have been probably executed a bit better. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's as an ending, it's like, yeah, it was just quite rushed.
Yeah, I mean, look, if these episodes were, say, 60 minutes instead of 48, then you could do more scenes, you could do more languid tempo, you could
Absolutely, yeah.
flesh things out, you could have more scenes that give the characters time to do things that they would do. It's all sorts of things, really.
But I will say, Shooty's acting during this scene when the boogeyman is about to like fly out and he's thinking about all the things that they've been saying in this episode. Bloody great. He is honestly just so good.
Yeah, a lot of the time, the cracks in the storytelling are being filled up with the cement, I guess you could say, the cement filler of these actors. They are carrying a lot of it. The show, when you watch the show, it feels a lot more consistent than it is because of how good the acting is.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of, I don't want to say fool, but that it does fool quite a lot of people when like a story is like really, it's filled with holes in its writing. The acting can shield it.
This is probably a hot take. I think Broadchurch is like that. It's got a lot of great actors in it, so it fills a lot of those.
It certainly does. David Tennant is great.
Olivia Colman
is very good.
Yeah.
Even Jodie Whittaker in that is great.
David Bradley's in that. Arthur Darville's in that. You got this great cast and some very great directors that fill the cracks and make the show a lot better than it really deserves to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you had the bit in the end where, as a final joke, was kind of like, okay, the space station getting to finally move because of baby farts. It's kind of like, okay, maybe that's a bit too silly for me. Maybe that's just me.
It doesn't have the satirical sludge of the Slovene, does it?
Or even the bogeyman in the episode. But yeah. But then obviously as we mentioned, the scene between Ruby and the Doctor talking about why, or Ruby can't go back to see her birth mother on Christmas, I think was, again, very good scene. When Ncuti takes things seriously, he honestly is like insanely good.
Yeah.
When the story calls for it, he's shown that he can deliver a very serious moment. Just his face during that scene, just like he's just so calm and like very serious and to the point. It's very nice to see a Doctor that's like that.
I am actually really impressed as well at how well Russell is able to capture a modern day 18-year-old character. Or 19 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think here's the thing about Ruby. I think as a character, she is, when comparing her to all the other Russell companions in their first couple of episodes, I think she's definitely the weakest. However, I think she is capturing that modern 18-year-old very well.
Yeah, she really is.
Millie is perfect for the role.
Yeah.
She is like insanely good as an actress.
Absolutely.
And I think as Matt said in the chat, Ms. Gibson's acting reminds me a lot of Jenna Coleman's. Perhaps maybe in later seasons, not in season 7. I think her acting is fine, but it's not on this level. I think Millie is like seriously showing off some insanely good acting for an 18-year-old.
There are some inflections and expressions that are similar to Jenna Coleman, but I don't think Millie Gibson has the same level of edge. I don't think Millie Gibson could play evil the way Jenna Coleman does, because I think Jenna Coleman's a lot better at really ripping you, whereas I think Millie Gibson's a lot more likable. She has a friendlier output, is what I would say. Jenna Coleman is very smug, which is perfect for Stephen Moffat. In fact, that's actually something I'm interested to see how Stephen Moffat writes Ruby Sunday. Actually, I think that'll be fascinating.
Yes, I am. I'm very excited for the next episode. I'm very excited. I'm excited for the next 2 episodes because they are going to be, because the 73 Yards is going to be very Ruby Sunday heavy, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and that's something that I think we need.
Oh, definitely. I think that's very much needed.
Yeah. So yeah, should be interesting. But yeah, I did enjoy Space Babies. I did enjoy it on the whole. And you know, it's interesting because I usually, you know, if anyone who works at my work knows, I usually am really like, I don't say it obviously to their faces or the parents' faces, but I'm quite detesting of when babies cry at my work, and I often will mock them and do impressions of them because I think they're so fucking annoying. And they have very little redeeming qualities outside of potential. And I vastly prefer like pet animals over babies, like human babies.
You're a pet parent. That's what you are.
I am. I love my cat Gaz. But the thing is that there is a kind of a tongue-in-cheekness to this that makes the whole baby thing work better. It has different layers of it. Like there is the really the really childish layer to it, but there's also the part of it that works better for an older perspective as well, and that is something that I think Russell did intentionally, because otherwise it could come across as very, very child audience pointed, and it isn't. It's got different things for different people in it, and that I think that helps. It definitely helps it work.
Also, one scene that we actually didn't talk about is the scene between the Doctor and I can't remember what the name of the baby was, but the captain, the little girl captain. The scene between the baby and the Doctor was very cool. I really liked, because Shooty's Doctor is very very child friendly in terms of how he acts.
Yes.
And I really liked how he described, like, I'm the only one of me in the whole universe. That was very like Doctor to me.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a bit of like early 11th Doctor.
Yes, it absolutely does.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna
Also, the anti-pro-life and refugee messaging was actually well done. It was a part of the episode, but it wasn't a messaging that was beaten over your head. It was very naturally integrated into
so
the
what
episode.
You're saying is that Russell is pro-death. Now you're right though. The refugee stuff was actually really well done. The way that they can't get any ships to take them to the planet because they have to arrive there, and which is very much an allegory for, very much an allegory for how refugees struggle in real life.
If it was like a Chernobyl era episode, it feels like they would have mentioned it like 3 times, especially at the end. And really put it down like Orphan 55, obviously.
No, it was an allegorical situation that came up, and it wasn't harped on. It was something that
like the crew left, and they all said they were going to protest.
Yeah,
which I think was just,
again. This is a thing that I think usually Russell is pretty on the nose with. Is he's pretty good with his political subtext. I think he's been pretty consistent over the years with that. I think my favorite example of it is probably Gridlock, though, because that is so deep on many levels. In terms of Doctor Who, at least, we're talking we're talking outside the show. Obviously, Years and Years is kind of his masterpiece in that regard.
Absolutely.
Then stuff like Turn Left and Sound of Drums and all sorts of things he's done. It's a sin.
It's a sin.
But yeah, there were certainly some well pointed views, which was nice to see. Absolutely. After the last. I mean, I don't think Stephen Moffat was too great with the politics stuff either. Some of his stuff was really rubbish,
really bad.
Yeah,
what was bad?
Yeah, so it is nice to have the show have an intellectual who knows a lot about what he's talking about and knows how to integrate it into a story without it being cringe, writing the show.
Yes.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Asmat, actually. Probably. Certainly Russell T Davies and Malcolm Holt. I mean, Robert Holmes is just one of the best writers in general, and that it encompasses all fields, and politics is one of them.
Oh, one thing we also haven't mentioned is, what's your opinion on the added elements in the opening sequence?
Do you mean the title card? Are you talking about the?
Yes.
It's way better.
Yeah. The first one is out of sync because they didn't play an opening title, and the sequence is sort of needed to kind of have that opening sequence to lead into the sequence. So it was a little bit out of sync. I'm glad that they extended it and the logo looks better. The one thing I would say is that the shot of the like outer space before it gets into the vortex, it feels like it is separate from the rest of the sequence in terms of how it looks. It's my one sort of issue with it. It doesn't feel like it's from the same sort of session of when they made it.
It's probably added on.
Oh yeah, it's definitely been added on. But it doesn't feel like it's in tune with it, I guess. But yeah, much better. Yeah, so that was Space Babies. For me, I probably would say it's like around a 5, closer to a 6.
I'll say 6.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5 out of 10.
I'm pretty harsh these days with my numbers, so 6 is actually pretty...
same, yeah. Oh, yeah, same, exactly, yeah.
I've recalibrated the way I rate things now.
I'm giving it a 5 out of 10, closer to a 6 than a 4.
Yeah, I've kind of recalibrated the way I rate things these days, so 6 is actually a really good number.
Yeah, same. Yeah, 7, like 5 is like, I think it's flawed, but there's absolutely things to like about it. Any lower than that, and then we're having a bit of issues.
Yep.
So yeah, but yeah. On to episode 2. The Devil's Chord. What is your opinions on the Devil's Chord, Connor?
So there's a few things. There's a section of this episode that is genuinely incredible. It's the scene where everything goes silent. That was awesome. Brilliant. I loved that. I fucking loved that. Yeah, I think most of this episode is really good, from what I remember of it.
I think the first half an hour is like generally the best Doctor Who we've had in like years.
Yeah, it's like, that and Well Beyonder and like the first 2/3 of the Giggle are like proper Russell T Davies, great stuff. The whole setting with the costumes.
The amount of dopamine I got when the Doctor and Ruby went through a tunnel and then appeared on the top tunnel in seamlessly, like with no cuts. Oh, I fucking jizzed everywhere.
The episode looks fantastic. It's beautiful to look at.
So fucking good. The direction was awesome.
Yep. The scene where they interview John Lennon and Paul McCartney was also great. I loved that.
Beautiful. Loved it, yeah.
Now, in terms of what's her name? What's the actress's name who plays the villain?
Jinx.
Yeah.
I don't know how you pronounce it, but Jinx Moonson or something like that?
Yeah. So I know that drag queen acting is an acquired taste and not everyone's going to like it. And that's fine. I think it worked here. I think in Russell T Davies' style, and especially the tone he's going for this time around with Ncuti's era, I think this tone of Doctor Who makes her acting style feel more in sync. If this character had been in a different era that was a bit less like this, I think it would have felt more out of place. But I thought the performance worked really well for the character, especially given that this is one of the Toymaker's sort of associates, and Toymaker himself is a very flamboyant, extravagant, theatrical character. So there is a place for it. And yeah, the fact that this is obviously a historical, so it links to the history of music, something that Doctor Who hasn't delved into too much, and this goes all the way with it. Choosing an iconic musical moment, obviously the Beatles in the 60s, huge for the UK. Harkening that back to Harbinger with, piece of music that, it connects to the myth, and that's part of the Wobbly Yonder Giggle thing, which was a great connection. Some of the character stuff with the Doctor and Ruby was exceptional. It was really, really good stuff between them. And I thought Ncuti was awesome with his performance throughout. And yeah, on the whole, I think it's pretty strong. Now, I got a little analogy to give you. This is something that I thought about 2 hours after I watched the episode. I was in bed and I just sort of thought about something. So, you know the twist musical at the end of the episode.
Yes.
So when I watched that, you know what it made me think of? I couldn't formulate it at the time, but after the fact, I remembered what it was that feeling was. It's like when someone, whether it be a friend or a family member, is doing something, and you go to watch them to support them when they're doing something they really like. So whether that be a performance like musically, or whether they're playing sport, or whether they are getting awarded for something, there's situations where you'll go and support your friends or your family members when they're doing these sorts of things. You're not necessarily there because you would go out of your way to watch this sort of thing, but you can appreciate it because someone you care about is doing it. And so when I watched that musical moment, what I felt was I am watching this and appreciating that a show I like and characters I like are involved in it. But I wouldn't go out of my way to watch this if it wasn't for the fact that I knew the people in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'm enjoying that they are enjoying it. That's what I mean. I'm sort of living vicariously as opposed to actually being a fan of what it was. And people might say, oh, you don't like fun and you're old and miserable. And sometimes it does feel like I'm old, actually. But again, I did mention with the Space Babies, I like languid tempo, and this was the polar opposite of that, and that's fine. The show doesn't have to always be what I want, and that's fine.
Yeah. As long as it's well written, I'm
there's so much of this show that is for me, that is made the way I like it. Yeah. So I'm fully content for it to do something new it's never done before, like musical scenes like this. And that's fine. I doubt they're going
to be regular things.
I will say, though, I did love that at the end of the episode, they went back across the Abbey Road crossing and it played like a piano. That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked the first half an hour of this episode a lot. As we mentioned, I think the direction was fucking gorgeous.
I just want to interrupt you. Maddox has just said 0 out of 10 should have been about Pink Floyd. You're absolutely right. The episode would have been better if it was about Pink Floyd.
It would have been 10 out of 10. Yeah. I like the first half an hour from the very beginning to the scene where they see what the world becomes without music. Fucking beautiful. I absolutely love the first half an hour. I think the performances were fucking brilliant. I think how they described how important music is, and sort of, you have, how, the members of the Beatles talking about music at first as sort of like a mundane thing of just like, I just need to get paid and then I can get an actual fucking job. But then they talk about when they're like on their own thinking about music and chords and putting it all together and how it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Fucking awesome. Loved it. So like how nice is it to have historical figures in Doctor Who with actual personalities? Fucking hell. It feels like we haven't had that.
Man, that scene where they first see the Beatles in studio.
It's so funny. Shooty's reaction when the third time they go and see the band and it's awful. His face when he bends down, his face is just like, what is this? It's so fucking good. And
I like how they
were just patting him on the back.
They really captured the sort of the Scouser mentality of the Beatles as well. They're like, oh yeah, come on, George.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, and sort of like we haven't even mentioned it once. The scene on the rooftop, Ruby playing the piano.
Oh yeah,
fucking beautiful. That is so fun. Like, again, it shows how important music is, not only to the world, but just like to individual people, and how people have different reactions to music. You have one person crying, you have one person just soothingly dancing to it, you have another one just chuckling in happiness. It's so nice to have these scenes again. Oh my god, it's so nice. Ah,
Yep.
and just the fear on the Doctor's face when he hears the giggle, but in music form. It's just, I loved it. It's just a ha 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 ha. Ha. Oh, I love it.
Yep. The fact
Love it,
that
love
they
it.
linked it to the giggle as well. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, really good, really good. And Shooty's acting when, and I shared this on Twitter, and it's doing quite well, as I said. Shooty showing Ruby the future. Not only did it remind me of, was it Genesis of the
Pyramids. No,
Daleks?
it's Pyramids of Mars.
Pyramids, yeah, there you go, Pyramids of Mars. And it also reminded me of City of the Daleks, the game we played on stream.
Yes.
And Ruby sort of like, why am I not fading away? And
Get
because
some warmth into you.
Yeah, get some warmth into you. And it was also funny because that also took place in the same year as this, 1963. Obviously, because
Fascinating.
first year of
Oh
Doctor
yeah,
Who.
there was also the fact that it's like, oh yeah, Todd is Lane, I'm there with my granddaughter.
That's really cool. I really like that.
And then
Do you think
Ruby's
Susan,
like, you have a
do you think Susan-
granddaughter?
Yeah, it's really cool to see. Like, it's nice to see the Doctor, because that's always been in Fear Her, that was referenced, the fact that the Doctor was a parent and had children. And it feels like since like only like once Moffat kind of mentioned that, like in Good Man Goes to War. It never really feels like we ever. Jodie didn't even fucking mention it once. I don't think. The fact that she was a parent once, that she had children and a family. It's just so it's nice to feel like that's going to be explored in this era. I'm so for it. I'm so for it because I feel like that's a part of the Doctor that can garner so much potential. And the way Russell has set it up here, I'm very intrigued about what he's going to do.
You know,
and do you think Susan is returning?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I was just going to say, bouncing off Will again, is that obviously it makes more sense to have it be the Beatles because they're more iconic. But if this episode had Syd Barrett as a historical figure, and the reason why he makes psychedelic rock is because he looked into the time vortex, I would actually shit myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, like you mentioned, the scene of them hiding, and when it goes completely silent, fuck me, that was so good. That was one of my favorite scenes. So it's just like the eerie of of nothingness, like the nothingness of sound. The sound of nothingness was just, I loved it. So good. And then I think I liked the rest of the episode, but again, I feel the ending is very rushed. The music battle, I think, in concept is a neat idea, and I think the execution of it probably just wasn't quite there.
Well, it kind of reminded me, the music battle reminded me of anime. The anime I've seen, anyway.
A little bit, yeah. It reminded me of Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like...
Not shit, though.
Well, you know what it made
me
think of? It was like Dragon Ball Z, but gay. That's what I thought.
Gay Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was fascinating that it was John Lennon and Paul McCartney that defeated the celestial body.
The way that all was done was kind of strange because he kind of just walks. I wish they had just a shot of him hearing something going on and then going to look, because he kind of just appeared out of nowhere. He was just around.
Also, as expected, George Harrison gets snubbed again for some reason people just don't actually give him his credit.
And it's funny also, the beginning of City of the Daleks has Amy and Eleven talking about seeing the Beatles.
Yeah.
And then one line I always remember is the Doctor going, what? Not Ringo? Why doesn't anybody want to meet Ringo?
I think for
There's
me...
no such thing as a sexy drummer.
I actually think that Ringo's more iconic for Thomas the Tank Engine in my life than his drumming in the Beatles.
Yeah, I think what I would have changed is that I would have had the musical be a part of the reason why Maestro was defeated. I think that would have been a better way to integrate the musical number.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a bit random and out of nowhere.
Yeah, what do we think about the time jump?
Not a fan. Really not a fan. 6 months is, like I said, 6 months is way too fucking long. Like that's so much time for
Do
Ruby
you
to like
reckon
sort of have that whole
that
world changed.
it would possibly? I mean, we have to see the rest of the season to really
Sure.
understand. But if
Yeah.
this episode had happened later, maybe it would work better.
I think it would have. If it was just like episode like the 5th episode of the season.
Or
Yeah.
here's an alternative, because it's 8 episodes, right? Is what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
If it was 13 episodes and you stuck the rest of what is not there in between Space Babies and this. So you stuck the other 5, 4 or 5, I think it's 5 that would have been if it was 13, in between Space Babies and Devil's Chord. Maybe.
Yeah. Possibly. I think the dynamic that between the Doctor and Ruby, I think with
the passengers told the Fat Controller that this was a bad railway. I fucking love that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
though.
I think
you're right about George Harrison though, as Matt, because John Lennon and Paul McCartney, yeah, they have, when it comes to writing memorable lyrics and singing and being the iconic figures, they have it more. But George Harrison, musically speaking, is the backbone of the Beatles for me. He really is what makes that band click musically.
What was your opinion, Connor, on Maestro as a villain?
I think they were really cool. One-off, unique. If this was a recurring villain, I don't think it would work as well. I think this is one you only do once.
Yeah.
The way that Maestro was the way that Maestro was one of the toy makers, associates was a really great integration. I think
like children, quote unquote,
what this performance does best for me is the physical action. That it really is the best part.
She is like very, very like her like body acting. I think is like,
well, as I said,
exactly what the character needed.
My favorite scene in the episode is when it goes silent and when it's all just visuals.
Yeah.
The way she translates the acting is superb, and things like
just throwing like the bottle on the floor.
Yeah.
And it just that kind of stuff is right. She did a great performance in that scene.
Yeah. Yeah. And the tone of the show at the moment, it feels like it can fit a performance like this in. It feels more consistent than it would be. You remember what Alan Cumming was like in The Witchfinders? It felt very in conflict with the episode and the tone of the show. Because Series 11's tone was very dire, grey Sunday drama, and King James was very flirtatious and camp. Whereas here, everything about the show is like that. For the most part, anyway. So it kind of fit with the tone, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think, with how much they built up Maestro, that the ending was a bit flat with how they were defeated? I felt it was a bit flat.
I mean, if this was... you could have made this a 2-part story. Maybe.
Possibly. Because halfway through the episode, Shooty is very much like, I can't fight this thing. And then a couple of minutes later, they are. And I guess you could say there's no choice.
Yeah. Do you think maybe... because I've always argued that in RTD's first era, he had a pretty good track record, not just his episodes, but ones when guest writers did, big stakes. There seems to be more of an ability to justify having these stakes subverted at the end. So the way that they did it didn't seem to be so much of a push and a pull. Whereas with something like this and the Star Beast especially, I don't know if that kind of patching and justifying is as clean as it was back then.
Yeah.
The the end of the Shakespeare Code is like that. It has world-ending stakes, but the way it's executed, I feel, makes it work within its historical context. It doesn't seem to not fulfill what it is. That's how I feel about that ending. This has a similar setup and a payoff, but as I say, I don't know if it quite manages to execute it as well as it could have.
Yeah. I feel like the ending for me feels, in concept, I think is fine. The execution, I feel like, is quite rushed. Like once they finally like talk to Maestro, feels like the next sort of like 10 minutes are very fast tracking to defeating them. And I feel like with the music battle, I feel like, again, in concept, cool idea, execution just isn't all there. Also, one thing I found very strange was the way they had Maestro say music battle. It just felt really out of place. Not only was it reversed, but also it sounded really strange, and just the line itself, I just felt was very out of, like, it didn't really fit with the episode itself. Just them going music battles, just okay.
It was like something out of a video game, an arcade
Yeah,
machine.
it does. It doesn't. It feels like something that Schindler would write a little bit.
I mean, a lot of this stuff was the way it was written. It felt more like a stage play than a TV episode.
At times, I felt that maybe was too out there. I think for me, it didn't really feel natural.
So what you're saying is you don't like drag queens because you're a massive transphobe.
Obviously.
Yeah. In terms of
Jeremy, I think Jinx's performance was really good. The only thing I would say is that when Maestro would yell is probably when I'm like, I don't really need that. I enjoyed them being a lot more like low, at times quiet when it needed to be, and a lot more sinister. You know,
I think this is an epiphany I've had, that because I've been to drag shows at clubs, right? And the difference there is you've got a room full of very loud, drunk people and loud music. And so yelling makes sense because you have to actually yell over everything else that's very loud. But when you're in a silent room and you're yelling, it's a bit different. And I'm not sure if that kind of acting works as well in a TV presentation as it does in a live atmosphere. You know, like an actual, you are in a room full of very loud, very drunk people screaming and having a good time and listening to loud music. That for me is one of the differences.
Yeah. Also, this was the first episode of the season where we had our first murder at the start of the episode. Quite brutal.
I actually that is something that has been quite nice about RTD too, is that he's not afraid to talk about death all the time.
Well, that was kind of the same with his first era.
It was. I mean, fucking Voyage of the Damned. Jesus Christ.
Death was a big part of Doctor Who. So
Voyage of the Damned had so many deaths.
How many deaths have we've had? Star Beast, was there like, there were deaths of like the I can't remember what they were called, but the big insect bugs. The Wrath Warriors, was it?
Maybe.
They died. While Beyonder, the villains died, so that was kind of, yeah. The Giggle, you had the staff that the Toymaker killed by throwing them off, which I thought was very good. Very good stuff. There wasn't any deaths in Church Ruby Road, I think.
Oh, apart from the the big Jabba the Hutt eating babies thing, and
ship. Again, that was the villain. And obviously no deaths in Space Babies. So this was sort of the first on-screen like casualty death of like a person, you know, if you get what I'm trying to say. Which is like, yes, finally, feels like that's,
in Space Babies, there wasn't anyone that did die, but it was talked about the doctor mentioned
Yes,
it
he was. Yeah.
very vividly.
Oh yeah.
Said the babies will die.
Mhm. Yeah.
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 In terms of what Asmat said, the oldest one and the one who waits, it's got to have something to do with that woman that lives next to Ruby's house,
I
right?
would imagine so.
Because
I did find Maestro as they were defeated, just going. It's not. It didn't really feel the same as my legions are coming. Them going. The one who waits is almost here. Felt very okay. I think that's Russell's. That is his thing. I think that's going a little bit too far north. I think. I think that was a bit much.
It was very, as I say, Dragon Ball Z, but gay.
Yeah, probably. I think it was enough for Maestro to go the oldest one and trying to figure out who that is. No, he couldn't have been there. Because that's what they're referencing. Are they the same person? I'm not sure. There's a lot of setup at the moment.
One of my favorite one of those that Russell ever did was in Boomtown when they brought up Bad Wolf, and then the doctor's like, "No, it's probably just a coincidence."
So good, so good. Because that had been set up with the amount of times we've seen it at that point, yeah.
Yeah. And then the very next episode, it all goes tits south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about the musical number. We did a little bit.
Yep. Again,
I will say, I don't think the song is very good.
Yeah, they could have chosen a different song, I guess.
Is that a song that already exists?
I believe so.
There's always a twist at the end. Let me see. I don't think
it sounds familiar to me. They should have. They should have chosen "Interstellar Overdrive" by Pink Floyd and have everyone do acid. That would have been better. I
think that's an original song.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a bit disappointing if that's the case.
I see. Maybe it's by Murray Gold.
I would imagine so. Also, Murray Gold was in this episode.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was in the Next Time trailer as well, wasn't he?
Oh, was he?
Oh no, sorry, no, you're right. No, he was at the end of this episode.
No, he was on the piano during the number.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He was in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see him in a nice little suit.
Yep. He was also in The Voyage of the Damned, wasn't he? He was part of the band.
Oh, was he? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's in Voyage of the Damned. I'm trying to remember if he's in Mummy and the Orient Express or not. I can't remember if he's part of that one.
But yeah, speaking of Murray Gold, though, the music in this episode, just in general, other than the musical number, was bloody great.
Yep, it was. Yeah.
Especially the scene when it actually was quiet and subtle during when they went back to 2024. I really enjoyed that.
What? Murray Gold doing subtlety? That's not possible.
No, he always has to make loud noises. Also, actually, what was your thoughts on the intentionally bad songs at the start? I love my dog. My dog is Fred. I love my dog. He's a dog.
Yeah, I definitely laughed. That was hilarious.
Yeah, that's very funny.
Yes,
I love you. You love me. We are two. We're not free.
I think you might be right that Dudley Simpson was in an episode, but I can't remember which one it was. It's got to be somewhere between season 2 and 17.
You know what I actually would have also liked? Because they, at the beginning of the episode, when they got into Abbey Road Studios, there was obviously a woman with a tea cart.
The Talons of Wang Chiang. He was a hall conductor.
Ah.
Yep.
Neat. One thing I wish they had done is shown the perception paper. During the bit where they send the woman off so they can get access to the hotline because they're giving people tea. I think that would have been cool because Well, now because the whole idea is that this is going to be like new for new people who are watching on like Disney Plus and stuff. If you want to introduce things, I imagine that is going to be a thing,
God,
especially since Russell did bring it back in Star Beast.
imagine if instead of the Beatles, it was Nicki Minaj.
Oh God.
So then you two could do that.
That'll be in 40-45.
Yeah, when Chris Chibnall comes back to do his second run.
Jesus, no. Imagine if that happened. Fucking hell.
It was really bad.
It was really bad. But yeah, I enjoyed The Devil's Chord quite a lot.
I did, yeah.
I would say it's a high 6 out of 10.
I'll go. Let me just have a think. You keep talking.
I'm talking. Oh, actually, I just seen a tweet that the ratings were 2.6 and 2.4 overnight.
Okay.
That does not include the BBC iPlayer figures, obviously, because obviously it came out midnight the night before. I'd imagine it would probably be around like a 4 or 5. I'd imagine.
I'm going
That's
to
my
go
guess.
with a 7 for Devil's Chord. I think.
All right.
I was thinking, is it good enough to be an 8? But nah, 7.
I don't think so. I think it's higher.
Not
than
not
I think
quite.
the highest I'll probably go is 7. At the
Not
moment, I've
quite.
got it's a high 6, like a 6.5. Yeah. So, and then obviously next will be Boom next week.
Oh yeah, Stephen Moffat's return the first time in 6 and a bit years. December
First time
2017.
under Russell since 2008. I am very looking forward to it. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be the story that we want. That is our style.
Maybe
with this Doctor and Ruby.
I don't know, man. It's
forward.
hard to say because it's if you're talking classic Moffat, yes, but are you talking, showrunner Moffat? I'm not so sure.
Oh, God. I don't. I think it is gonna be like a one-off, and I think it's gonna be akin to a lot of his old stuff.
Well, apparently he's doing the Christmas special as well. Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, that one I'm a bit more. I'm not sure how that's gonna go.
Doctor Win in the Wardrobe Part 2.
Anyone? No. Yeah, Moffat writing a Christmas special doesn't excite me. Writing a regular episode, yes, please.
Yeah, well, I hope it's classic Moffat. That'd be nice. I think it's been a few episodes since Wild Blue Yonder. I think it's maybe time we get something a bit more serious.
I think it is going to be serious from how it looks so far.
You
got like the idea for the Doctor in one place, stuck in one place for the whole episode. Oh, that's me. That's my got my lemons juicing.
Yeah.
Squeezing those lemons.
Absolutely, and it'll give Ruby a challenge.
Yes. And then the episode after that obviously is as we mentioned, 73 yards, which I think is going to be very Ruby heavy.
Who's writing 73 yards? Is it Russell?
Russell, yes.
Okay. Good stuff.
And then after that, Dot and Bubble, which is also written by Russell. Then after that will be Rogue, which is written by the two writers from Loki, which I'm not that excited about because it's the writers from Loki.
Well,
we'll hopefully see if maybe they can.
I mean, Russell T Davies is a known forensic script editor. He's like that. He plays operation. I mean, you know about how Russell T Davies rewrote 99% of the Impossible Planet Satan Pit script. Mm-hmm. It was Matt Jones's idea to do that satanic alien outer space story, but Russell didn't like the script, rewrote pretty much all of it. And so, yeah, it's the same idea, but the story is almost entirely different in how it goes from when it was originally written. Still credited to Matt Jones, but it's really a Russell story. So it depends on how he receives the scripts that are given to him by those writers.
Yeah. Yeah. After that, though, will be the 2-part finale The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death,
Yeah.
which I imagine, and I don't know if you have you seen the synopsis for
Nope.
for those.
Nope.
I'm assuming you
I
don't.
don't want to know. Nope. Don't care.
Okay, I know a thing about one of those episodes. Not obviously what it actually is, but what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
I'm expecting Legend of Ruby Sunday to be a very big episode.
Well, I mean, some reason when I hear those titles, I think of the Eighth Doctor two-parter Lucy Miller to the Death, which I haven't listened to, but I know quite a bit about. I don't know like very specific details, but there's elements of those titles that are fascinating. But we'll see. I assume that the inevitable that something will happen at the church in the past in the plot. That's my guess, because it's something the Doctor wants to avoid, but you just know it's going to come up.
It's coming, yeah. I do really like the fact that whenever her past is mentioned, it does snow. So it is an element that something supernatural is happening.
For sure.
Do you think I think there's a theory going around that she might be related to the Doctor in some way. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't. I probably not a fan of that if that's the case.
Well, you think the Doctor shagged her mum? Is that what you think?
No. There is one theory that I saw that Russell is actually going to retcon the Timeless Child into being Susan instead. I think Mr. TARDIS actually did that. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world, and it would fix a lot of problems.
I just think fucking leave it alone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just leave it alone.
Thing. It's like probably leaving it alone is probably best.
The doctor relating to his companion by saying he's adopted. Yeah, that's great, but apart from that, just leave it alone. Just move on. The Trickster might come back. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Trickster would be very.
I know
good.
Jeb. Oh. I know Jeb has wanted Omega for many years. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, I would say that. What would you say in terms of like the start? I'm assuming you think this is a decent start to this new era.
Yeah, it is. It is good. I don't. I'm not head over heels like Evie and Sky seem to be, and Jeb, but I do like this. I think Doctor Who at this point, possibly because of what's happened with Chibnall Who and how it's kind of damaged my perception of the show a bit. Doctor Who these days, especially New Who, is really, it's a show that I watch when it's on and I enjoy it. But I'm not really obsessed over Doctor Who like I once was. When I really dig into the history of it, especially with Classic Who, I can get that invested again temporarily. But it is no longer my every waking thought like it used to be. I'm much more obsessed with other things these days. But I will still watch the show and enjoy it when it's on.
Absolutely. I think my sort of perspective of it all is that, and I've said this many times, this show is going to be trying to rebuild trust. And that's what I feel like is very much on point here. I'm not expecting, like, as I mentioned with the viewing figures, I'm not expecting it to be massive numbers for a long while. Because the show, 5 years of damage takes its toll. Like, that is a lot of damage. So what this show is going to have to do is earn trust back with casual people.
Yeah. And the late Moffat era divided.
That doesn't happen overnight.
The late Moffat era divided opinion a lot. It was very divisive.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this is going to have to rebuild a lot of trust, and that is going to take time. That doesn't happen overnight.
I mean, it's going
to take multiple seasons.
It's in the prime red pillow position. It's on the front page of Disney Plus when it's airing. So it it is in the right place where it needs to be. It has a big star in the show that people like. You know, they are trying really hard, and that's nice to see.
No, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll say,
But also, one thing I will say: next time trailers are back, thank God.
Yeah, and they're not as spoilerific as they used to be, which I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I hate when they're spoilerific. Just a short teaser to make you have tension for the episode I like, not something that's going to tell you what the episode organically should be building to.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say so far I am in positive position overall, but room to improve, definitely.
Yeah, me and my old dinosaur brain would prefer it if the show was slower and longer, but
yeah,
that's me and how I am. I mean, it is difficult because I've recently been watching, Better Call Saul, which is a much more language show by comparison to Doctor Who, and I think that kind of storytelling pacing is something that really resonates with me because it lets everything soak properly. Doctor Who, once upon a time, was like that, but and sometimes it can be. I mean, Wild Blue Yonder was really well paced, but that's a minimalist story. I'm not saying going down the classical elitist view of it being 45-minute syndrome, because I don't believe that is true. Because I think that you can actually create really well-told stories in that time frame, and I think it's been done before. In Russell's first era mainly, there are many examples of it being done really well with a limited time frame. I suspect that they might be trying to capture the TikTok generation, which is just going to enjoy a different kind of storytelling that has a more of a dependency on dopamine than what I like. And if it's for them, that's fine by me. But just personally, from a creative satisfaction, if I was running the show, I would do it slightly differently. I would have the episodes be longer. I would allow the dramatic beats to be more fleshed out and have room to breathe and really allow the impact to set in on not only the characters in the story, but the people watching the show. And that's really what I would say, mainly. But the acting is superb. Most of the jokes are really funny. The show feels vibrant. It has energy, and it feels cool. It's not cringy like it used to be, in the way that Chris Chibnall made it really cringy. I don't feel embarrassed watching it. Weird stuff does happen in it, like, baby snot and like the big, queer dance at the end. But I don't feel embarrassed to watch this show in my living room with other people there.
No, yeah.
I can feel kind of proud of its weird quirks as opposed to before, when I'm just sort of sitting there just like, oh God, this is bloody awful. So yeah, it's better than Chibnall Who, and it's better than a lot of the Moffat era for me, but I think there are things about it I would change.
Yeah. Which I think it definitely can in the future.
Yeah. And the next episode's written by a different person, so we'll see how that goes.
It's actually the first new writer.
The Moffat episodes he wrote in Russell's first era, the pacing in those are impeccable.
Absolutely, all of them are great.
Yeah, The Empty Child, The Girl in the Fireplace, Blink, and Silence in the Library.
I think this will comfortably. I will say, unless it just goes very, very wrong, I think this will comfortably be the best episode of the season so far, easily.
Yeah, it could certainly well be, but we'll have to see how it goes. Mm-hmm. I just hope that some of his tropes that I associate with his negative writing don't seep in, because that would really sour it.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that the 4 stories he did in RTD's first run, they all very immersive, and the drama is very well executed, and it allows the story to really breathe and soak everything in. So we've seen that Steven is capable of it, but then at the same time, you look at some of the stuff he did later, and his obsession with overstuffing the pudding does become a problem. So it just depends on which Moffat we get.
Hopefully the good kind.
Please don't have, like, just weird sexual dialogue that doesn't need to be there. That's my request.
Yes, please.
Because the last episode Moffat wrote for the show, we got bloody David Bradley threatening to smack Bill's bum, and I don't need that. Gotta go smack bottom. It's like something Walder Frey would say.
Button.
He thought he was being the first Doctor in the Dalek invasion of Earth, but it actually came across more like Walder Frey in Game of Thrones. I think
I thought that I would be younger.
I think Rob Stark married her for her tight fit. Yeah. That's such a fucking good episode. Oh boy, yeah. The Reigns of Castamere.